dreamt about how things were.
Of every enemy of the state.
On October 26, 2001, President George W. Bush signed the Patriot Act, which gave law enforcement broader authority to investigate and prosecute suspected terrorists. Now, that signing ceremony.
The changes effective today will help counter a threat like no other our nation has ever faced. We've seen the enemy in the murder of thousands of innocent, unsuspecting people. They recognize no barrier of morality. They have no conscience. The terrorists cannot be reasoned with. Witness the recent anthrax attacks through our postal service. We're dealing with terrorists who operate by highly sophisticated methods and technologies, some of which were not even available when our existing laws were written. The bill before me takes account of the new realities and dangers posed by modern terrorists. This new law that I signed today will allow surveillance of all communications used by terrorists, including emails, the internet, and cell phones.
What's in a name? You may have been introduced to the term Homeland Security as a justification for needing to take your shoes off at the airport or for spending billions of government dollars. But what does Homeland Security actually entail? That innocent question would stump the 30 federal agencies and groups who receive Homeland Security funding. This is according to a new report from Congressional Research Services. It says, 10 years after the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks, the U.S. government does not have a single definition for Homeland Security. Currently, the different strategic documents and mission statements offer varying missions that are derived from different Homeland Security definitions. That's according to the Congressional Research Service, of course. And the idea of Homeland Security and the agency with that name came up after September 11th, of course, the first foreign attack on U.S. soil since Pearl Harbor, and arguably the largest. So it is generally agreed that terrorism and the notion of protecting the homeland play a different part in the idea of Homeland Security. But some of the mission statements the report analyzed found that natural disasters were considered a threat to Homeland Security, or at least an excuse to get some of that federal money pot, at least. 2012 Department of Homeland Security threat even included the very vague phrase, other hazards, to make the definition as broad as possible. Now, this is more than semantics. If there is no agreed-upon definition for Homeland Security, then different agencies could be on totally different pages. They could get in each other's way potentially, or even have conflicting strategies. So don't expect Merriam-Webster to come up with a good definition to Homeland Security anytime soon. The government that invented it still hasn't come up with one itself.
Have you ever heard of Homeland Security? If you have not, it's kind of obscurity. Let me explain what this committee does. Everybody shut up and listen. It does many things, such as protect us from terrorist attacks to emergency preparedness. When the Arabs hit the towers, our security was weak, but as time went on, we got back on our feet. Ever since then, our security has grown. That's why when there's an emergency, everyone will know how to be aware and prepare for damage which could happen there, to make it so the slightest criminal ideas are not rare. Remember back when Hurricane Katrina hit, the country was not prepared the very least bit. New Orleans flooded and very many died, but as long as we stay prepared, we may all stay alive.
Once again, our security has been built even stronger.
Homeland Security, right? We'll be protected until we die.
No other country will be stronger than ours.
Homeland Security, right? We'll be protected until we die. The chairman is Peter King of the Protective Senate Committee. He's a Republican from Manhattan, New York. I may sound like a reporter, but I'm not Kurt Short. Also, there's a minority leader. His name's Benny Thompson. He's a Democrat from Mississippi, and he's no punk, son. Oh yeah, remember Osama bin Laden, the Arab from Pakistan who thought he was cool, but we got him! Our American soldiers killed him at his home. Now other terrorists are mad because we shot him in the dome. Our security has been monitoring for any more threats, so we can live in peace without any regrets.
They do their best to do what they can, but they need your help too.
Homeland security, right? We'll be protected until we die.
Don't just sit and watch. Do something about it.
Homeland security, right? We'll be protected until we die.
The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, you were both a state and federal prosecutor. Did you ever approve or sanction investigations that allowed gun walking?
No, not to my knowledge.
ATF is doubling its presence in Mexico itself, from 5 to 9 personnel working with the Mexicans specifically to facilitate gun tracing. Activity which targets the illegal weapons and their sources in the United States.
Again, I follow on that.
Yes, Madam Secretary, on the issue of arms, part of the problem, I mean, the question basically is, how successful do you expect to be in this effort to clamp down on the trafficking of arms going into Mexico, when part of the problem is, all these going chowns along the border? I mean, do you expect to go against the people who sell these arms, which is part of the problem? I mean, maybe you can be successful in stopping arms, but if you don't do anything to, do something on the source of this illegal business, how can you expect to have a real impact in this issue?
Several things. One is, first of all, you've got to interdict the arms. You've got to stop them from going into Mexico. That's why we're increasing the southbound inspections. That's why we're moving the technology to the border to help with screening going into the border. We're coordinating with Mexico because they can do more by way of southbound screening on their side of the border. But then the Department of Justice moving their agents down there, as David said, and increasing tracing. That will help us identify who is putting those arms into the arms, those guns into the arms of the traffickers moving south. And out of that, there can reasonably be seen more prosecution of actual arms dealers who are intentionally and knowingly putting arms into the hands of the smugglers. So that is part of the reason why the Department of Justice is such an essential part of this initiative on Mexico.
The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, you were both a state and federal prosecutor. Did you ever approve or sanction investigations that allowed gun walking?
No, not to my knowledge.
Is Big Sister watching?
I think Big Sis is my moniker in the Drudge Report, so I knew I'd actually made it when I had my own name in the Drudge Report. It's kind of, well, I don't know about that there was that kind of delay, but I will tell you we found it so inherently unbelievable that those statements would be made. It was hard to ascribe credibility to them, and I don't know if I would put Forbes and Drudge in the same sentence, but let me be as clear as I can be.
Well, leave Drudge out of it, I wouldn't. I think they're credible, but Forbes is definitely a credible magazine. And so when they use that number and then we hear silence from the department and Americans see the ammo shelves empty, all that feeds that.
Well, like I said, it got into the blogosphere and it went viral. We understand that. And as I was with Senator Johnson, let me be as clear as I can be. This was a 5-year strategic sourcing contract for up to those 1 point whatever rounds, billion rounds. It's an up to number. We usually use 150, 160 million rounds a year. We do all the federal law enforcement training, qualifying, We do a lot of the training and so forth for state and locals, plus our own operational needs. We are the largest federal law enforcement agency.
In the essence of time, you did a great job. I asked to submit for the record her testimony yesterday in the Senate.
Without objection.
You answered those questions yesterday, and I appreciate that.
Okay.
I guess I was just asking about the silence, why there was a delay in you guys saying, you know, these numbers aren't right.
Yeah, like I said, it really didn't start getting to us as a question until I think we started getting congressional inquiries, and that was sometime after the reports had first surfaced. So if we could have been quicker to the ball, perhaps, but again, in the press of things, if I might say in our own defense, we just couldn't believe that anyone would believe those allegations. And so let me be very clear. Absolutely not true.
All right, Mike Adams here with a quick update for you. Department of Homeland Security has purchased 7,000 full auto assault rifles, but it calls them, quote, personal defense weapons. So you see, when you buy them, they are, quote, assault weapons, but when DHS buys them, they're personal defense weapons. But check this out. They are actually full auto weapons. Let me show you the actual bid page. Here it is. This is the bid page, and if you go into this bid and you click on these, I think it's the third one right here, this PDF right here, section C, you can see the actual specifications that it's asking for. And this is going to the ICE National Firearm Tactical Training Unit. These are 5.56 by 45 millimeter NATO, quote, personal defense weapons, full auto, and it says right here in the bid, the action shall be select fire, capable of semi-auto and full or automatic fire, meaning full auto. Also, the magazines have to have a capacity to hold 30 NATO rounds. Those are AR-15 rounds. This is an AR-15 weapon right here. That's what that is.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. I am Matt Larson, and earlier today, Breitbart.com came out with a shocking news story. You remember when DHS and other parts of the government, like Social Security part of the government, purchased big amounts of ammo? And this wasn't just pistol ammo, it was assault rifle ammo. Well, Breitbart.com has released a document showing that actually this last June, DHS is now attempting to purchase 7,000 rifles to shoot that ammo with. Now, if you don't remember, they purchased about 1.9 billion rounds of assault rifle ammo. That's enough for more than 3 bullets for every single person in America. And now, we don't know if these reports have come out to actually someone fulfilling the bid of the government, but they have put out a bid that they want to purchase 7,000 fully automatic AR-15s. Their reasoning behind it is because they say that they are personal defense weapons that are perfect for close combat with select fire and full auto or semi-auto, and it's great for concealment.
Well, Bill, I come from a way of life in the military where you don't buy weapons that you don't intend to use. Why would you? And if you look at what the Department of Homeland Security has been purchasing over the last year, it comes out to like 1.6 billion rounds of ammunition, more than 7,000 fully automatic assault weapons, 2,700 MRAP type vehicles, and now drones. Those are instruments of war. Department of Homeland Security's, who are they going to fight a war against?
Yeah, like I said, it really didn't start getting to us as a question until I think we started getting congressional inquiries, and that was sometime after the reports had first surfaced. So if we could have been quicker to the ball, perhaps, but again, in the press of things, if I might say in our own defense, we just couldn't believe that anyone would believe those allegations. And so let me be very clear. Absolutely not.
Congress shall now vote for approval of H.R. 8791, the Homeland Terrorism Preparedness Bill. Said bill requests emergency response funding up to and including, I'm sorry, this section is classified, dollars to prepare for a national level terrorist attack and or attack from classified. Funding for first responder personnel and vehicles would be doubled if said attack leads to more than 80% of national population being affected by classified. This funding shall commence in conjunction with the first attack on classified or the first large-scale outbreak of classified, dependent upon which comes first. Civilian and military units shall be trained in containment and combat of classified, including irradiated classified, with possibility of classified airborne, classified flesh-eating, classified, and or all of the above in such event as classified spewing, classified escape, are released or otherwise become uncontrollable. Air Force units may also be directed to combat said classified due to their enormous size and otherworldly strength. Should event occur in urban areas, Jesus, that's classified, far surpassing our darkest nightmares. Should casualties exceed classified body disposal actions, shall be halted and associated resources shall be reallocated to classified underground, classified protected birthing centers. A new Bill of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified. Having now reviewed the bill, I ask you to please cast your votes.
Republican Senator Tom Coburn triggering our Washington Watchdog report, and ABC's Jonathan Karl has what is in this report.
The zombie apocalypse. This isn't some really bad B movie. It's an actual scene from the 2012 Counterterrorism Summit attended by law enforcement officials around the country. Summit tickets, $1,000 a pop, paid for with your tax dollars. The zombies look scary, but organizers say the skit was solely to add levity to an otherwise serious meeting on protecting the homeland. Senator Tom Coburn says it's just another example of more than $7 billion in questionable homeland security spending every year.
Blown. Waste.
In a new report, Coburn cites example after example, including nearly $30,000 for an underwater robot in Columbus, Ohio, the $69,000 hovercraft for Indianapolis, and this, the sleepy town of Keene, New Hampshire, citing the need to secure its annual Pumpkin Festival, was awarded a grant to buy a Bearcat armored vehicle, price tag nearly $250,000. Department of Homeland Security told us its grants, quote, make our communities safer places to live.
In the press of things, if I might say in our own defense, we just couldn't believe that anyone would believe those allegations. And so let me be very clear, absolutely not.
He's only 12 years old, but his name is on the TSA's terror watch list. So why would he ever be considered a security threat? Alex Shehab and his parents, Tracy and Edward, join us live today. Good morning to all three of you.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, so Tracy, why don't you start the story for me? You go to Newark Airport in New Jersey. You're going on a trip. And suddenly they detain you and stop you?
That's right. Actually, it started before that. We, normally print our boarding passes at home to make our flight and travel simple, and weren't able to do that. They said for some reason we were disallowed from printing our boarding passes. So we get to the airport, wait in a long line, and they tell us that my husband Eddie and I can fly, but our son Alex cannot. And
that must have caught you by surprise, right?
Completely, all three of us by surprise, having traveled often before this and never had a problem.
So, Ed, you found out that your son, a 12-year-old, is on the terror watch list?
Yes.
How could that be?
It seems the way it works is that if there's a name, someone's name is on a watch list, then whoever has that name is on that list. They say, the TSA says that there are no children on the watch list. Well, that's not true because he's 12 and he's on the list.
So you wrote an email to the TSA back in January.
Yes.
They responded and said that they would give you back an answer in 30 days.
They said it takes at least 30 days to process it. It's been 60 days, and we haven't heard anything back since then. They gave us a redress number, and that's basically about it.
So, Alex, what has happened to you at school? You're only 12 years old. What are the kids saying to you?
Well, some of them are now calling me a terrorist because now they think that, now, since the TSA thinks I'm a terrorist, now they think I'm a terrorist.
Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes. First tonight on Fox 4 News at 5:30, a 12-year-old wheelchair-bound girl was detained for nearly an hour at DFW Airport. She was trying to get through security. She was on her way to Florida for medical treatment, but security agents said she was a threat. And this, honestly, is a story that's going to outrage a whole lot of folks. Deanna Anglin is here tonight with a story that you will see only on Fox 4. Dion.
Yeah, Heather, this little girl travels from her home in Kaufman County to Florida for medical treatment for
brittle bone disease. She's made the trip many times, but this time screening agents stopped her, separated her from her mother, and she says put her through a terrifying ordeal.
The upset little girl in the center of your screen in the wheelchair is 12-year-old Shelby Walzer. On Sunday, TSA agents at DFW Airport detained her because they claimed she had bomb residue on her hands. Agents would not allow her mom, Tammy, to get close to Shelby, so she started recording on her cell phone.
Are you kidding me? And then hard to hear her, for her to hear and know that I go to touch her and then they're telling me
we're going to get you out of here in a second, okay?
It was frightening and I got mad.
And I said, what do you mean she's been, what did you test her for? Well, she tested positive for explosive residue on her hands. Oh, okay. So at that point, you would think that they would have checked her wheelchair. And they did nothing. And then that's when it just seemed to, everything just seemed to spiral out.
TSA agents kept her isolated, but in plain view of hundreds of passengers while they called in a bomb specialist. Other passengers who watched were just as outraged.
There was just people saying, really, you're going to do this to her? Y'all have to take her somewhere private to where she's not out in the public to where everyone can see her.
After 45 minutes, Shelby's mom says suddenly agents simply told them they were free to go and offered no explanation and no apology.
It was a little much. I don't know what to learn from it. Somebody needs to, they need to go back to the drawing board on this one.
Well, the mother and daughter barely made their flight. We asked the TSA about Shelby's encounter. They responded to us with a statement that says, in part, TSA's mission is to safely, efficiently, and respectfully screen nearly 2 million passengers each day at airports nationwide. We are sensitive to the concerns of passengers who were not satisfied with their screening experience, and we invite those individuals to provide feedback to TSA through a variety.
Now to a story a lot of you have been talking about. A 4-year-old boy was forced to take off his leg braces just so he can go through airport security.
Yeah, we first told you about this story yesterday in Fox Talk, and this morning we're hearing from that little boy's dad. Only on Fox, Heidi Hatch now live in the Fox 35 Satellite Center with our exclusive interview. Heidi.
Good morning, Mike and Jackie. Thomas, this little guy's dad, says that his son Ryan has those braces obviously for a reason. He needs them to stabilize his ankles, and he has a really tough time walking without them. Ryan Thomas came into this world 16 weeks ahead of schedule and weighed only 1 pound, 10 ounces.
You go in thinking, here you go, he's got braces on, he's going to be able to fly through the machinery, whatever have you. Hey, I don't have any problem you wanding me or searching me, whatever have you. But this is a handicapped, disabled child.
This is what Ryan looks like now, a smiling 4-year-old boy. But his father, Bob, says no one was smiling last March. He says he was appalled when TSA workers forced the boy to go through security without his braces. He spoke to his supervisor, but says the man dismissed him.
A new report in U.S.A. Today examines what could be a massive vulnerability in our national security. Travel by train and subway. Let's take a look at the numbers for you. Every day, 15 million people board trains and subways without being screened by security across the country. That's a conservative estimate. While there has been controversy over ramped up security measures on planes, there are just 700 million airline passengers a year compared to 4 billion rail travelers. And when you look at spending, since September 11th, $30 billion has been allocated for airline security over about a course of 10 years. Comparatively, just $1.7 billion has been for subways, cargo, and passenger rails, buses, and ferries. Roger Cressy is an NBC terrorism analyst and the president of Good Harbor Consulting. Roger, thanks for joining us today. How serious of a problem is this?
Well, Richard, it's a serious problem, but it's one that's not going to be solved anytime soon because the traditional security procedures that we can deploy simply don't make sense with the type of economic model necessary for the subways and for rail. Well, instead of looking at it from the aviation security perspective, we're going to have to look at it from a different perspective, which is you're never going to have universal screening. You're never going to have those type of layers. Instead, you're going to have a random-based approach that may detect problems, but is never going to guarantee that high level of confidence we see in other transportation sectors.
How effective are those random-based screenings? Has there been studies on them?
Well, they have, and random-based screenings are a form of deterrence. The whole idea is to create a public level of scrutiny, a public level of security that potentially deters others from wanting to bring something in for fear they might get caught. But the sheer randomness of it alone is a great vulnerability if a determined terrorist wants to go through it. So instead, what you got to think of is that it's not security measures as much as it is good intelligence and being able to identify these people well before they get to the train station or the subway station.
So, Roger, if a municipality comes to you, comes to Good Harbor Consulting and says, we are looking for a solution, what would you suggest to them other than this random-based screening that they may be able to employ?
And by the way, they're going to ask for a solution in a budget-constrained environment because nobody has money right now for these things. It's several things. It's a layered approach of deploying people for a random screening, deploying available technologies to better determine where there are anomalies, and also it's a public awareness campaign. Amtrak has had a see something, say something. New York has deployed that for a number of years, and it's that type of passenger vigilance that's going to be important. But it's also just realizing, Richard, we accept a level of risk in our mass transportation regarding threats such as terrorism. That's never going to go away, and it's one we just have to be comfortable with and manage it appropriately.
And one of the challenges for experts like you, as well as these municipalities, are between those train stations, between those stops, even though you may be screening them there, there's a space in between where attacks could happen, right?
Absolutely. The intermodal nature of mass transit creates all sorts of opportunities for an adversary. And you also have a lot of trains and their cars being housed in areas that are not secure at all. It's not like an airport where a plane overnight stays in a secure location on the airport grounds. So the sheer volume of potential vulnerabilities is so high that some of the traditional security procedures simply don't apply. That's why we have to be creative, and that's why security at the stations is the last line of defense. The first line is identifying these people before they ever get near the potential target.
Yeah, and most of the resources that we were just talking about here, Roger, have been going for airline flights and security with regard to passengers. But there's also cargo flights that fly over the United States. Is that a major vulnerability as well?
Well, we saw the air cargo plot that came out of Yemen 2 months ago, and you've seen more attention to cargo screening as a result. For some time, there was a priority to try and get 100% screening of cargo. That's not going to happen either because all the cargo coming from international airports, simply they don't have the same level of security procedures there. So, again, you have to identify the most at-risk locations, improve the security at those locations, and hopefully that will get us the level of security that is at least manageable and acceptable.
Yeah, because cargo is not.
528. As part of their nationwide Viper team effort, the Transportation Safety Administration put about a dozen agents at the Emeryville station to see and be seen. We've blurred their faces because some of these TSA inspectors also work undercover.
The visible deterrent is making a presence known at the station, getting on the train, talking to passengers, letting the bad guys know that we're here and letting the passengers know that we're here, and working with law enforcement to really tailor our Viper teams to their needs.
The idea is to look for signs of trouble in a place that can be difficult to police because of its wide open environment. That said, the TSA and Amtrak believe that working together they can make rail travel as
Our
safe
Tampa
as it
police
can be.
and federal government agencies are teaming up to keep your family safe. They unveiled a new plan that could stop a potential terror threat where hundreds of people pass through each day. Bill Logan was there for a first-hand look.
It's the sort of security we've seen a lot of since 9/11 at places like airports and seaports and major sporting events. Now, here at the bus station.
To sort of invent the wheel in advance in case we have to, if there ever is specific intelligence requiring us to be here, this way us and our partners are ready to move in at a moment's notice.
What we're looking for are threats to national security as well as immigration law violators.
We're also looking at one of our main initiatives, which is bulk cash smuggling.
And so passengers ready to head toward Orlando, Jacksonville, and points north had to go through a series of checks while Susu from the Tampa Airport Police Department gave the bus his sniff test. It's all part of what Homeland Security calls Viper, for visible intermodal prevention and response.
Let me set the scene for you for the latest incident. It was this past Sunday night here at LAX about 7:30, probably crowded because a lot of people were coming home from the New Year's holiday, when suddenly a man starts acting strangely. He starts saying, "I'm God, I'm in charge." LAX police arrest that man, and he turns out to be a TSA agent.
Now, new tonight at 6, a Dallas Cowboys fan suspects it was her jersey, not security, that led TSA screeners to pull her out of line for additional searches at Philadelphia International Airport. Now, as Eyewitness News reporter Walt Hunter tells us, she's asking TSA officials for an explanation and an apology.
Wearing her Dallas Cowboys jersey, lifelong fan Allison Galen was headed to the Terminal C screening area to board a flight to Florida January 15th. When before she even got to the metal detector, she was ordered by a TSA screener to get out of line.
My husband said to me, "Did you beep?" And I told him I didn't even go through the metal detector.
Wondering why she was subjected to the additional search, Galen, a mother of 3, on her way with her husband to Florida following the death of a family member there, now found herself being patted down in this plexiglass area in plain view of other passengers.
It was a plexiglass room and everybody could see me. So it was kind of embarrassing all the way around.
But the biggest shock for Mrs. Galen, who never asked the TSA why she was being singled out, came when a screener walked up to her as she was putting her shoes back on, ready to resume her trip.
He walked up to me and said, "How does it feel to be a Cowboys fan in Philadelphia?"
New fallout after that ABC News investigation this week. Brian Ross and his team uncovering widespread theft by TSA officers working airport security, some of them stealing your property as it goes through those scanners. Last night here you saw Brian track down one stolen iPad to an agent's home, confronting him right there. Tonight, Congress taking notice, some calling it the last straw. And in just 24 hours, we've heard from thousands of viewers sending us messages on Facebook and online, outraged, some saying it's happening to them.
Today, the Department of Homeland Security is investigating whether senior officials tipped off airport screeners about security checks that were supposed to be undercover. NBC's Justice correspondent Pete Williams has more. Pete, good morning.
Hoda, good morning to you. For over a month now, in fact, Homeland Security has been investigating whether some screeners had improper advance notice of security tests. Now, a newly discovered document suggests that some tip-offs came from high up in the government. To test the nation's airport screeners, government investigators work undercover, seeing if they can sneak through with explosives. The tests are supposed to be a surprise. But the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Benny Thompson of Mississippi, has revealed this email sent to airports by a senior official at TSA, the Transportation Security Administration. Dated April 2006, it tipped off security officials at airports around the nation, giving specific details of what to watch out for. 2 people, with a woman using an ID with, quote, an Oriental woman's picture, even though she's Caucasian. It warned that the undercover testers would use boarding passes with the dates altered.
If I have reason to know that you're coming, what you look like, what you're wearing, then obviously that compromises substantially the validity of the whole process.
A TSA spokeswoman tells NBC News the agency takes this discovery very seriously and will fully cooperate with an investigation now underway. A security expert calls the email unethical and says given the warning, screeners should have done better.
Despite the tip-off from headquarters to the screeners, it still seems that they were unable to do well on these tests, and I think that's got to be very discouraging for people.
One of the most specialized teams you've likely never heard of. Immigration and Customs Enforcement runs a special police unit made up of about 16 men here in the Chicago area.
WGN's Lourdes Duarte had a chance to go along on a training mission as they took over a Downers Grove home. Lourdes.
Mark and Micah, when you think immigration and customs, you likely think deportations, but this team handles a lot more than that. They are a big resource for local law enforcement. Primarily, they handle crimes linked to our border. Some of the biggest busts involving drugs and gangs are handled by them. So they have to train, right? They let us go along and play along as they tested their technique.
Police with the warrant, open the door now! Police with the warrant, open the door now!
High-powered, high risk.
Put your hand on top of your head! Do it now! Get out! Get out!
Suited up is Homeland Security Investigation Special Response Team. There are just 16 of these teams in the country, and Chicago has one of them. Big crimes involving drugs, guns, and money illegally crossing the border go to them.
which oftentimes lead to situations or targets who are in fact very dangerous and become very high risk, even more high risk than we want the typical well-trained law enforcement agent to deal with.
Recently, they zeroed in on a group of foreign gang members here in Chicago. From above, cameras capture them moving in.
Made a series of about 30 arrests in one morning, and this team identified the most high risk of the Latin Kings.
In 2010, a train carrying 11 tons of marijuana coming from Mexico intercepted by, yep, these guys. In the nearly 10 years they've been around, the team is intact. No injuries, no deaths. On this day, the MRAT, a 30,000-pound vehicle, gets them to their location, a sprawling, abandoned Downers Grove home. First up, the flash bang. So loud, your vision is gone for about 5 seconds. Then there's temporary loss of hearing, loss of balance.
It is a distraction device, and as you saw, that's exactly what it's for. It's to give us a few seconds to get in there and do what we need to do.
Urban military training exercises are becoming an increasingly common sight in many U.S. cities. The Department of Homeland Security has spent the past year acquiring more than 1 billion rounds of high-performance ammunition. Do these developments suggest concerns over a potential terrorist attack? Are they preparations for widespread social upheaval? Is there perhaps something even more sinister underway? Military veteran and independent journalist David Bard reports that he spoke with a man identified as an insider at the Department of Homeland Security who described urban warfare training as, quote, desensitizing exercises all across the U.S., adding that, quote, we're being prepared for mass civil unrest in major U.S. cities. DoD will be expected to help when we're requested.
My name is Robert Whitaker. I'm the tactical supervisor for El Paso SRT for Homeland Security Investigations. Well, we have our big vehicle out here. It's an armored vehicle. It's an MRAP vehicle. It's mine resistant, ambush protected. That's what it stands for. This is what we use to deliver our team to high-risk warrant services.
Who's identified as a troublemaker, he has a cursor. He can put that cursor on that individual, pull the trigger that's on the joystick, and the energy is sent downrange at the speed of light.
The electromagnetic radiation released by the active denial system is similar to the microwaves in your microwave oven, in that it causes the water molecules in the target to become excited and heat up.
There's a shocking claim that Obama only wants military leaders who will fire on U.S. citizens. This comes from a very credited source. This man made a Facebook post yesterday, Dr. Jim Garrow, that he had been informed by a senior military leader that Obama has a new litmus test. And that litmus test is, will you fire on U.S. citizens or not? I have many buddies in the reserves, navies, marines. Many of them have told me the same thing. Matter of fact, quite a few of them have told me it was one of the very first questions they were even asked, if they would fire on U.S. citizens if they had to, which is disturbing in its own right.
DHS supplier provides shooting targets of American gun owners. Paul Joseph Watson has this shocking story about how Law Enforcement Targets Incorporated is producing cardboard cutouts of, quote, non-traditional threats. Of course, this is on the heels of the federal government purchasing in excess of 2 billion bullets for non-law enforcement, non-lethal agencies. What the hell is going on? They're producing targets that say do not hesitate, of children, of pregnant women, of elderly men, in summary, of society's most vulnerable and typically most innocent citizens. You just cannot believe these cutouts, but they produce them, and you've really got to ask why, on the heels of Homeland Security and other agencies preparing to deal with the American people, openly stating they consider them to be potential extremists and the enemies in the event of an economic or civil unrest event, anything really they can use to justify a total, literal occupation of America through Homeland Security and related agencies.
Janet Napolitano tonight
is facing a storm of protests over her department's view on domestic terrorism. Now, she is refusing to criticize a Homeland Security report that links right-wing extremists with military veterans, supporters of border security, and advocates for gun rights. Napolitano offered an apology of sorts to veterans. Critics say that apology does not go far enough. Bill Tucker reports.
Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano tried to clear up the controversy surrounding her department's report regarding the threat potential of domestic right-wing extremist groups. Single-issue groups such as anti-abortion activists, groups focused on illegal immigration or Second Amendment rights, and military veterans all were mentioned as groups vulnerable to recruitment by right-wing extremists in the report. Veterans who pledged their lives to defend the United States were especially stunned. So without disavowing the report, Secretary Napolitano explained on CNN's American Morning.
This is an assessment, not an accusation, as the Veterans of Foreign Wars organization released yesterday. But I know that some veterans groups were offended by the fact that veterans were mentioned in this assessment. So I apologize for
dreamt about how things were. And then I woke up here.